This is Earl Nightingale with Insight. Dr. Harold Blake Walker sent me something that I enjoyed tremendously. And I think you'll enjoy it too. He wrote, "We live by faith, or we do not live at all. Either we venture or we vegetate. If we venture, we do so by faith, simply because we cannot know the end of anything at its beginning. We risk marriage on faith, or we stay single. We prepare for a profession by faith, or we give up before we start. By faith we move mountains or opposition, or we're stopped by molehills." Faith, however, is not often tranquil and steady. It ebbs and flows like the tides of the restless sea. Normally, like Browning's Bishop, we're forever exchanging a life of doubt diversified by faith for one of faith diversified by doubt. Yesterday we began the day with confident hope, with trust in its promise. Last night, perhaps after a trying and troublesome day, we were beset by doubt and anxiety. We grope and fumble in search of certainty, wishing we could escape the doubts that haunt us. The peril is that we shall cease groping on through our doubts and live only on our negations. What we need, you and I, is faith strong enough to bear the burden of our doubts. No man ever drilled an oil well without being troubled by misgivings as the drill chewed downward toward producing structures. But only a fool would cease drilling halfway to the hoped-for pool. It was William Morris, the painter, who wrote, "I tell you it's no joke to paint a portrait. Into the painting of every picture that is worth anything there comes a period of doubt and despair. The artist, however, goes on with his work, beyond his doubt, to creative achievement. Faith enough to carry our doubts. It is enough. Perhaps it's all we can manage when fears assail and doubts annoy. Maybe we can do no more than grope on through our uncertainties, pursuing the enterprises of our lives in the grim trust that the end will justify the struggle. If, despite our gnawing doubts, we can muster faith enough to take a single step on the road to where we're going, we're on the way to creative achievement. Every triumph of the human spirit begins with one step taken in faith. The single step is the small handle to great matters. No man or woman ever won a worthy triumph without faith to keep on, always able to last at least 5 minutes longer. There is one further thing to be said, namely that worthy triumphs cannot be won without faith enough to maintain our integrity. One of the ultimate tests of faith is our capacity to go on believing that somehow the right is the right, even when right is on the scaffold and wrong seems to be on the throne. All of the great ventures of our lives require faith enough to bear the burden of our doubts, so that we're able to take the first step in the direction that we wish to go. Enough of faith to keep on going through struggle and strain and to maintain integrity on the way. Faith, as the ancient seer wrote, is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And we need to exchange a life of doubt diversified by faith for one of faith diversified by doubt. In Anthony Trollope's autobiography, he points out that he was able to turn out an almost unbelievable amount of work and still have all the fun and enjoyment he wanted, the company of good friends, card games, and hunting twice a week, along with a 6-week vacation every year. As he himself put it, few men, I think, ever lived a fuller life, and I attribute the power of doing this altogether to the virtue of early hours. It was my practice to be at my table every morning at 5:30 a.m. An old groom whose business it was to call me and to whom I paid £5 a year extra for the duty allowed himself no mercy. During all those years at Waltham Cross, he was never once late with the coffee which it was his duty to bring me. I do not know that I ought not to feel that I owe more to him than to anyone else for the success I've had. By beginning at that hour, I could complete my literary work before I dressed for breakfast. Here we're amazed at the amount of work that this man managed to produce, and he wrote some 50 novels, and find that he was able to do every bit of it before breakfast. There's a very valuable lesson there. Few people realize the enormous cumulative effect of a small amount of time utilized on a regular basis. And before we pass this by, let me emphasize that regular basis business. It seems that most people do things by fits and starts, whether it's dieting or exercising or planning and fulfilling worthwhile goals. This is perfectly human. We're not machines. But as Anthony Trollope indicated in his autobiography, he owed a large part of his success to the man who woke him up every morning at 5:30 with a cup of coffee. By 7:30 every morning, he had put in 2 hours of solid work. By 9:30, when most people are just getting started, he was probably through writing for the day. If someone should steal $10 from us, it might take us days to get over it. Yet how much priceless time do we steal from ourselves? Someone once calculated that the average person is given about 500,000 hours, give or take 100,000 or so, and it's up to each of us to determine what his time on earth is worth in whatever values he feels are important to him. But if we don't get what we want out of this life, it's seldom because we're not given enough time for it. We have more than enough time. As with most everything else, it's what we choose to do with it that makes all the difference. There are few things a person could want that he could not manage to get for himself with 2 or 3 hours of daily time systematically and practically put to use for a given number of months or years. What he does with his time will, of course, depend on the person. He can do whatever he most wants to do toward the end he most wants to achieve. For one, it could be a course of study, or reading, or writing, or planning, or whatever. But it's something to think about. Reading the autobiographies of outstanding persons can stir our creative discontent. Someone wrote, "Each moment as it passes is the meeting place of 2 eternities." It would very probably be a very good thing if we took a long, serious look at the way we spend our time. Dr. Irwin Ross, a psychologist, author, and consultant on personnel problems, reports that no matter how you cut it, sugarcoat it, or rationalize it, there are only 4 reasons why people get fired. Learn them, and you'll live to be an oil portrait in a boardroom. A person can get fired only if he, 1, is a round organization person in a square corporate hole, 2, works at a job that gives him no satisfaction, 3, neglects his personal relationships with associates, and 4, keeps his nose so close to the grindstone he forgets the purpose of his work. Now let's look at them in order. Unless you know what sort of person you are, it's hard to know if you fit in your organization. Are you big company minded, or does the more intimate, less complicated small organization appeal to you? Do you want rapid promotion, strong competition, or are you looking for security and lack of pressure? One top-notch controller who had built a reputation as a competent executive in the public utilities field took a whopping offer from an automobile manufacturer. He threw his solid but slow skills into the fast world of car manufacturing and soon found himself outdistanced. He simply could not get used to making what he called snap judgments on matters he'd have mulled over for a couple of weeks in his old job. So he was a round peg in a square hole. Second, job dissatisfaction. Of all the rules of business life, the sternest is, don't take the first job you find. Too many people, panicked by the prospect of unemployment or eager to make a change, forget that getting a job isn't difficult. Any well-organized self-promotion campaign will produce plenty of job offers. Getting the right job, however, can be difficult. Remember that you're looking for more than just work. You're developing a career. As to neglecting personal relationships, there's an old corporate adage that points out that the higher up on the pole the monkey climbs, the more he exposes the seat of his pants. Organizational politics exist everywhere. There's always a race going on to win top management control, and for place and show as well. Every increase of authority for one person creates jealousy and suspicion among some of the others. In the power politics of big organizations, no holds are barred. Having lots of friends and knowing how to work with them spells safety for you when throats are being cut, says Dr. Ross, and he gives 5 don'ts. Don't threaten the position of old-timers in the company by being too bright, too aggressive, and too often right in management meetings. Don't take sides in ongoing company feuds. Don't knock the ideas that others advance and then expect them to back yours. Build friendships through helping others get their ideas across. Don't get too far in front of the people you're trying to lead. And don't misjudge co-workers. There may be reasons why they're where they are and you where you are. And finally, reason number 4. Have you ever said, the only way to get something done right is to do it myself? Well, that's the swan song of many an executive career. Modern industry is far too complex for the person who can't develop competent assistants to share his load. Delegate, and let people grow. And don't be too tough. You're a long way from perfect, too. Lin Yutang, the famous Chinese philosopher, wrote, "We do not know a nation until we know its pleasures of life, just as we do not know a man until we know how he spends his leisure. It is when a man ceases to do the things he has to do and does the things he likes to do that the character is revealed. It's when the repressions of society and business are gone, and when the goads of money and fame and ambition are lifted, and a man's spirit wanders where it listeth, that we see the inner man, his real self." Had you ever thought much about that? Your leisure gives you away. I used to know a man who was head of a very large commercial empire. Beginning with nothing but ambition, he became a multimillionaire and finally retired as head of his far-flung company. He bought a large and magnificent yacht with which to cruise the world. And you know what he did with his free time? He read salacious paperbacks and got falling down drunk and had to be carried unconscious to bed every night. He's dead now. His leisure gave him away. There was nothing there, just nothing at all. He was a one-idea man. Once he was away from that idea, he was a lost child in the wilderness. He didn't enjoy his yacht or his time. Travel meant nothing to him. He was a pitiful, unhappy cipher. His millions, which could have given him access to the whole world, were worthless to him. The thing that's always bothered me is how a human being can live for 30 or 40 or 50 years and find no interest, no charm and excitement in the world. Talk about wearing blinders. I guess it has to do with the way a person looks at life. If it's nothing more to him than getting through one day after another as best he can, that's one thing. But if he's searching for meaning, well, that's something else. It doesn't mean he'll find it, but the search, the journey itself, can be filled with interest and excitement. When FDR first took office as President of the United States, one of his first acts was to call on the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Oliver Wendell Holmes. He was admitted to the old jurist's chambers and found him reading Plato. Justice Holmes was in his 90s. "Why are you reading Plato, Mr. Justice?" the President asked. "To improve my mind, Mr. President," the great judge replied. "To improve my mind. What do you do with your leisure time? It's a good idea to examine carefully this important segment of your life. It exposes the real person, but not the finished person. We can change. We can, like Justice Holmes, still be growing and improving our minds at 92. I don't mean we need to read Plato, although it's an excellent idea, but to find fulfillment, meaning, and interest, we need to grow towards something. When we stop growing, like my millionaire friend with a big yacht, we get sick and die. We may stick around a few more years and go through the motions, but for all practical purposes, we've really ceased to live. We do not know a man until we know how he spends his leisure. It is when a man ceases to do the things he has to do and does the things he likes to do that the character is revealed. It is then we see the inner man, his real self.
Earl Nightingale's message profoundly captures the essence of faith as an indispensable force in human life, extending beyond religious belief to encompass personal and professional pursuits. He asserts that faith is fundamental, driving us to take risks and venture into the unknown, thus preventing stagnation. Acknowledging the fluctuating nature of faith, Nightingale normalizes the doubts and anxieties we face, emphasizing that persistence amidst uncertainty leads to success. He highlights the coexistence of faith and doubt, using historical references to show that perseverance despite doubt is crucial. Nightingale also stresses the relationship between faith and integrity, suggesting that maintaining integrity through faith ensures alignment with core values, especially during challenging times. The practical application of faith is illustrated through Anthony Trollope's disciplined routine, demonstrating the power of consistent effort. Additionally, Nightingale touches on the importance of how we spend our leisure time, advocating for its role in personal growth and lifelong learning. Ultimately, his message encourages embracing uncertainty, persisting through doubts, and using faith as a guiding force to achieve goals and live fulfilling lives.